Hello and welcome to Good or Bad. Do you think creating an AI-driven robot toy to be your child's best friend is a good idea? Well, the woman in this movie does, and I think it's fair to say it didn't work out. This is M3GAN. It's about Gemma here, played by Alison Williams, and due to an unfortunate event, she's given custody of her niece Katie. Katie is played by Violet McGraw, but the thing is, Gemma is more of a career-driven person than a guardian or role model. She works at a big toy company, and she's working on a prototype super toy that basically is an AI robot that will pair with your child and be there for them forever. And creating this robot seems to be the only way that Gemma can care for Katie. You know, the movie does state that she could give Katie to the grandparents. Maybe that's a better idea. But the grandparents don't really come into it again, nor do we ever meet them. And as the movie goes on, things start to get a little murderous with the robot. Basically, despite a quick throwaway line that states they did all they could to stop M3GAN from being able to hurt people, M3GAN hurts people. Anything that is perceived as a threat to Katie must be eliminated. I won't spoil who dies, but I will say that in general the death scenes are quite basic. For essentially a supercomputer AI-driven robot of death, people get stabbed, smacked and hit with things. That's all we really get. It's not really anything special in that regards. Although one person does get their ear pulled off. That was fairly cool. The final fight with M3GAN was okay. It was decent. It was nothing to write home about. But my big issue is, once M3GAN is destroyed, the movie just ends. Like they defeat it, walk out of the house, and after the obligatory "is it really dead" moment, it just ends. I felt like it could have done with a wind down, a conversation at the very least between the survivors of the film, even if it's just a couple lines of dialogue. But no, it just cuts to credit. The other thing is that the film touches on the theme of overdependence, but the film never really explores it to any meaningful depth. Katie becomes very attached to M3GAN throughout this film, to the point where she has a little breakdown when M3GAN is taken away from her. And I thought this was very interesting, and unfortunately it very much gets brushed over, and I think that's because the film's running time is 1 hour 42, so it has to balance that out with being a horror film. But it would have been nice if they explored that a little more. Obviously there was more to it here, but it reminds me of stories when you hear a child completely snapping and bursting into a fit of rage because their mum took their Xbox away. But obviously this is on a much bigger scale. This isn't just some toy to pass the time. This is something that essentially starts raising her. And other than the scene of her snapping and the therapist being there and just questioning whether being around M3GAN so much is a good idea, they don't really explore it beyond that. So I would have liked to have seen more of that. Also, there are moments in this film that are just brain dead stupid. Like they create this robot with a titanium exoskeleton that is super strong, and Gemma will just leave it with the child unattended. How blindly arrogant is that? What if a number was misplaced in the code, and M3GAN was putting a necklace on Katie but strangled her instead? Also, did they really need to make it out of titanium? They explain it by saying it can take anything life throws at it. What exactly will it endure? If somebody accidentally drops it from a 10-story building, it's their fault that they broke their $10,000 toy. And I suppose, as it turns out, there was something wrong with the code. They did overlook something, because it turned out to be a murderous superbot, and I doubt that was the intention. But moving on. The visuals of this movie are fairly impressive. The acting is decent, and it did build suspense fairly well. Also, you know how there's so many horror movies out there where the creepy demon or ghost or whatever will start walking around kind of like this as the bones are breaking and everything. It has that moment as well. When they throw a drink at it to try and slow it down and its electronics start going a bit crazy for a moment and it starts walking like that. Just to check that cliche box. They said it's made of titanium and can take anything life can throw at it, but a glass of water caused it to turn into a creepy demon girl. They're not as smart as they think they are. The only other thing I will say before wrapping this up is that towards the end of the film, I thought they was teasing this big finale, but it drops that for a small scale fight. And I thought this because the toy company was getting ready for a public launch, and I thought that M3GAN was going to do something cool here, like locking them all in and, well, just doing something horrific. But it never happens. Granted, I don't really know why M3GAN would have done something, so it definitely would have been forced if they did do it. But I thought this because the CEO guy puts emphasis on we need to fill these seats, we need this atrium full of people for this launch. It just made it feel like that something was going to happen with those people. But it never did. So there was no need for that scene. Ultimately though, nothing happened with that, so let's move on. So overall I thought it was good, and I think a sequel is inevitable given the fact that it's getting good reviews and it's making money. So I think in the sleepy cinema month of January, I think you could do far worse than going out with your mates and giving this a go. You have been watching Good or Bad, and I'll see you next time.